you don't want to let down the fans of the first movie. That's the biggest thing. And so it was really just trying to make a movie that would live up to the first one in the expectation of the people who really love the first one. So what that is, I can't really tell you, because then you start to think about, well, what is it that people love about the movie? And I don't know. They obviously like it as a whole, and they have, probably favorite things. And for me, there were parts of the movie that I felt were essential. Besides, the Derek and Hansel and their relationship, I always felt that Mugatu was a really important part of the movie, and so I, just tried to think of things that we would laugh at, and those of us who were making the movie, because it's really hard to project yourself into the minds of people who, for whatever reason, love the movie. Everybody has specific things that they like about it, so, which is great. It's great. I feel very fortunate that there are people who love the movie that much, but to really understand what it is and try to recreate that is really hard. I give Drake Sather credit for, creating it and coming up with the idea, and then when it evolved, when we were doing it, was the idea that he's really innocent and incredibly genuine. He's just very genuine and incredibly self-involved, but it all comes out of a very sort of naive and kind of innocent place with him. So it's like a very clear framework for what is and isn't Derek, and how Derek reacts to things, and so it's a very simple thing, doing the character. And so it was fun to go back into it. I didn't, at first I watched the first movie again a little bit, just to try to, make sure I was doing it right, and because, and then, we did some camera tests, and that was helpful for me to kind of look at it and see what came across and how much, but then it's a fun thing where you sort of feel like you fall into it, and then just trying to figure out okay, what the fun thing is, he's such a simplistic kind of character that it's fun to think of the different ways that he would react in different situations, to try to give him some other colors sometimes. It's 15 years later, we had to take that into account. What have Derek and Hansel been doing? When we first wrote the first script, it was 4 years later. Then we wrote the second script, it was 9 years later, and then all of a sudden it was 15 years later. So every time it's oh no, now Derek's son is 14. It's like the last draft he was 8. That changes the story a lot, So it was finally we got to make this movie soon, or Derek Jr. is going to be 40, so all those things were, trying to take that into account and figuring out how to portray the fashion world now, and yet not try to, because trends change so quickly, I think trying to figure out what would be something that wouldn't necessarily feel like by the time the movie came out, that was something that had already passed, And that's been a challenge, to tell you the truth, because also in satirizing the fashion world or parodying it in any way, it's all so over the top anyway, that you can't really top it. I mean, when you really delve into it and you look at, what people are doing out there, it's all so crazy. So he's living up in the mountains, and Hansel's living out in the desert, because his career is over, and they both receive an invitation. He gets a visit from Billy Zane, his old friend, who has an invitation in the mail from him, from Alexandria Atoz, who is sort of the biggest fashion icon in the world, in the wake of Mugatu going to jail, and she's sort of filled the vacuum, and she has a fashion empire, the biggest one in the world, and she has a new designer named Don Atari, who's kind of the hipster new thing, and she sends this invite to Derek asking him to be in Don Atari's show for her, and Hansel gets the same invite, mysteriously. So both of them, out of the blue, are invited back into the fashion world, and they can't resist, so they take the bait and they go. Owen is, he's such a unique comedic presence, and I am a big fan of his. I always have been. I enjoy him as a person. I enjoy him as a talent, and for me, he just created this character, Hansel. To me, Hansel and Mugatu and Derek are all to me that they all are Zoolander. You know, it's like when someone says they love Zoolander. To me, I think that means they love all those characters, and you know, it's a very specific point of view that Hansel has on things, and we decided to try to take some chances with going with some ideas for Hansel that have happened to him over the years that he's been out of the limelight, and you know, make a commitment to certain jokes with him that I felt Owen could pull off in a very unique way, because you know, he's just one of the funniest people there is.